The rain had been falling for 2 days when I realized no one was coming to help. My house, 40 years of memories, drowned beneath filthy water while my daughter texted, "Just ride it out, Mom. We're slammed here." Slammed. She meant busy. She meant I wasn't important enough to rearrange her life for. That was the moment it clicked. Not with thunder or some cinematic lightning bolt, but with a silence so absolute, it cracked something in me. I wasn't a priority. Not even to the girl I'd raised alone, who now had a husband, 2 kids, and a guest room she didn't want me in. I slept in my car that night, listening to the wind rip through my old neighborhood, watching the digital clock blink 3:17 a.m. while cold settled into my bones. That's when I knew. If I wanted to be safe, I'd have to save myself. I was 63 years old the first time I realized love could feel like being erased. Not violently, just gradually. Like a photograph left too long in the sun, fading until even the outlines disappeared. My name is Marian Douglas. I was a wife once, a mother, a teacher briefly before Kara was born, and everything shifted around her. That was how it went, wasn't it? You make room for your child, and then you keep making room until there's nothing left that was yours to begin with. Kara was everything. Her father and I had built our little home in Dayton with our own hands, weekends filled with paint-stained jeans and laughter echoing through unfinished walls. That house was our beginning, and when he passed unexpectedly from a heart attack, it became the place where I kept him alive in memory. Every floorboard he laid, every shelf he built, it all spoke to me. It was the only home Kara had ever known. When money grew tight during Kara's sophomore year of college, I sold my wedding ring, the one with the tiny sapphire nestled between diamonds. I'd worn it every day for 22 years. The pawnshop owner offered a low figure, and I didn't haggle. It was enough to keep her enrolled. She never found out. I told her the ring had slipped off during gardening. Later, when she graduated, I was there in the front row with a camcorder older than most of her classmates, cheering like a fool. She hugged me afterward, mascara smudged, whispering, "You're the reason I made it." And in that moment, it felt like the sacrifices had a shape, a weight, a purpose. I moved heaven and earth for that girl. I took early retirement so I could care for her daughter, Emma, when Kara's maternity leave ran out. I spent sleepless nights with a colicky infant pressed to my chest so Kara could rest for work. I packed school lunches, ironed uniforms, attended every dance recital with flowers in hand. I didn't mind. That's what mothers do. You give, because you believe one day you'll be remembered for it. In my heart, I thought love was a kind of ledger. Each act of devotion tallied up until the total came back around. Not in gifts, not in money, but in care. In being invited in when the world grew cold. I never remarried. Not because I didn't have chances. There was a kind-faced plumber named Ron who brought me lilacs every spring, but because no one could ever come before Kara. My friends teased me about it, said I needed a life of my own. I told them, she's my life. And I believed it. I truly did. Until the day I stood in my living room, water rising to my knees, clutching a photo album and dialing Kara's number over and over while the storm bore down on our town like judgment itself. She didn't pick up. I left a message. Calm at first, then more urgent. "Honey, the street's flooding. I think it's the dam. Please call me back." It wasn't until the next morning, standing in a Red Cross shelter in borrowed clothes, that I finally got a reply. "Sorry, Mom, slammed here. Just ride it out. You'll be fine." It was the kind of message you'd send someone who locked their keys in a car, not someone who'd just lost the only home they'd ever known. I remember staring at those words on my screen, over and over. "You'll be fine." And I wanted to believe her. I did. Because if I let myself think otherwise, if I let the fear in, then everything I'd built, every sleepless night, every lunch packed and tear-dried was just gone. That was the day I stopped waiting for rescue, the day I packed what I could into my 12-year-old Civic and drove to nowhere in particular. I told myself it was temporary, a couple nights, just until Kara had space for me, because that's what she said once when I first showed up after the flood. Of course you can stay here for a little while, just until you're back on your feet. But a little while had started to feel like a deadline. And when people set deadlines for love, it stops feeling like home and starts to feel like trespassing. I'd always thought that if I gave enough, loved enough, proved myself enough, there'd be a place for me. I was wrong. But back then, in those first few nights in the car, I still held on to the belief that Kara would come around, that my daughter, the girl I raised on bedtime stories and carrot sticks, would remember who I was. I didn't know yet that remembering isn't always convenient, and sometimes the people we give the most to are the ones quickest to forget. 3 days before the storm hit, I called Kara. "Have you heard about the dam?" I asked, holding the phone close while thunder rolled faintly in the background. "There's talk it's unstable. The town's put out advisories. Sandbags are going up already." Kara sighed. Not dramatically, just enough to let me know she was too busy for fear. "Mom, please. They've said that for years. Remember last spring? Same panic, no flood? You worry too much." "I know. I glanced out the window at the thickening clouds. It's raining harder this time, and the soil's already saturated." "Then don't park near the creek," she joked, already distracted. "Look, I'm slammed at work, big product launch. I'll call later, okay?" She didn't. That night, the rain came in sheets, a steady roar against the roof like something furious trying to get in. The next day, a notice came on the emergency alert system. Potential breach. Evacuate low-lying areas immediately. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed what I could, a single change of clothes, my wallet, a pair of old sneakers, and the small wooden box that held my husband's ashes and the last picture we'd taken together, me, him, and Kara on her graduation day. The Civic sputtered as I backed down the street. Water already licked the curb. 5 blocks later, the road became a river. A National Guard truck flagged me down and pulled me in through the passenger side as my car floated slightly before settling with a thud into the ditch. By the time we reached the shelter at the middle school gymnasium, I was soaked through, my fingers trembling from cold and adrenaline. I clutched the box to my chest like it might disappear if I let go. We were ushered onto cots lined up under flickering fluorescent lights. The air smelled of bleach and wet wool. A volunteer brought me a towel and a thermal blanket, but it was hours before I stopped shaking. People whispered around me, sharing rumors of homes swept away, of basements caving in, of dogs left barking on rooftops. I didn't cry. Not when they told me the Civic had been towed to a muddy lot on the edge of town. Not when I learned the house was under 6 feet of water. I only cried when I checked my phone and saw Kara's message. "Busy with project deadlines. Hope you're okay. Let me know if you need anything." No call, no offer to come, just words on a screen, clinical, distant, as if she were replying to an office memo, not her mother's near-death escape. I typed and deleted a dozen responses before settling on, "I'm safe, don't worry." And still she didn't. That night, I sat under a flickering light in the shelter, hair still damp, clothes borrowed from a donation pile with the smell of mildew thick in the air. I opened the box in my lap, running a finger along the photo inside. My husband, all toothy grin and arms wrapped around me and Kara, the sun catching his salt and pepper hair just right. "I'm sorry," I whispered. I tried to keep it all together. A woman across the aisle, a grandmother maybe, was trying to soothe a toddler with an old lullaby, voice trembling on the high notes. I wanted to offer help. I wanted to feel useful, but I couldn't move. I felt like an artifact, something washed up by the flood. The next morning, I was discharged from the shelter with nowhere to go. The The water had receded, leaving mud and rot and a vague sense of shame behind. My house was declared structurally unsound. The insurance adjuster offered a polite nod and a stack of forms. Structure only, no contents. All those years of memories. Kara's first lost tooth, her prom dress fittings in the living room, Christmas mornings with Coco and pajamas, all now a soggy ruin. I called Kara again, standing in a parking lot next to the Red Cross van. Voicemail. That evening, she texted, "Glad you're out. Maybe stay in the car a few days? We're still getting things sorted over here. Frank's overwhelmed and the baby's teething. You understand, right?" I stared at those words until the screen dimmed. You understand, right? I did. I understood perfectly. I understood that my daughter had space for baby toys and guest towels, but not for me. That her husband's stress trumped my homelessness. That the woman who'd once sold her wedding ring to pay Kara's tuition was now being asked to sleep in a parking lot because her presence might be too much. I didn't cry. Not then, not anymore. Instead, I drove to the edge of town and parked behind an old hardware store. I arranged the passenger seat flat, wrapped myself in the emergency blanket from the shelter, and cradled the wooden box on my stomach like a lifeline. The storm had passed, but the damage was just beginning. Kara opened the door wearing yoga pants and a ponytail, her phone still in one hand. She hugged me briefly, one arm, as if I were a guest who'd overstayed her welcome before I'd even stepped in. "Come in, Mom," she said, already turning away. "We've made space downstairs." Downstairs. The basement was unfinished, the concrete cold and musty, the exposed ceiling beams crowded with pipes. A blow-up mattress sat deflated in one corner, next to a laundry pile and an old treadmill gathering dust. A single bulb dangled from the ceiling, flickering with every footstep above. "I know it's not much," Kara said, glancing around like she'd just seen it for the first time. "But it's dry, and it's just for a bit, right? Until you find something." I nodded, too tired to argue. Eli came home later that evening, his handshake stiff, his smile practiced. He didn't look me in the eye. "Hey, Marian," he said, already walking toward the fridge. "Hope the basement works for you. We weren't really planning on long-term guests." Long-term? I'd been there less than a day. That night, as I lay on the crinkling plastic of the air mattress, I listened to the house above me breathe. The murmur of Kara and Eli's TV, the clatter of dishes, the quiet whimper of baby Emma through the monitor. I was invisible again, but this time, inside four walls that weren't mine. The next morning, I woke to find a note taped to the refrigerator. "Please label anything you buy. Trying to keep grocery costs organized." Beneath it, a second note, written in the same tidy block letters. "Wi-Fi info upstairs only. Signal weak in basement. Sorry." I stood there for a long time, my coffee growing cold in my hands. Upstairs only. Organized costs. Sorry. They weren't overtly cruel. That would have been easier to spot. It was the quiet distancing that stung, the way my presence disrupted their balance, the way Eli offered quick smiles without warmth, the way Kara hugged me sideways now. I began keeping to myself, spent most days at the library pretending to look for apartments I couldn't afford. I told myself I was helping, watching Emma in the afternoons, folding laundry, prepping dinner, but there was no thank you, no inclusion. Just a slow erosion of space and affection. One afternoon, I overheard them in the kitchen. "She's still here," Eli whispered. "I know. It's March, Kara. We said a few weeks. She doesn't even seem to be looking for work." "She is," Kara defended, but it lacked conviction. "She's trying." "Trying doesn't pay for diapers," Eli muttered. That night, Kara brought me a cup of tea. Her eyes were tired, but not unkind, just resigned. "Mom," she said softly, sitting on the bottom stair, "I wanted to talk to you about something. We haven't told anyone yet, but..." She smiled, the kind people wear when they're afraid of what they're about to say. "We're expecting again." I blinked. "You're pregnant?" She nodded. 12 weeks. Doctor confirmed yesterday. I reached for her hand. Congratulations, sweetheart. Another baby. That's wonderful. It is, she said, squeezing my fingers. It really is. Then came the twist. But it also means things are going to get crowded. Emma needs her space. The new baby will too. We'll need the basement finished for the nursery and... She hesitated, voice dropping. We're thinking May. That gives you a couple of months to figure things out. To figure what out? Well, a place, she said gently, as if I might break under the words. You know, something more stable for you. My hand dropped from hers. I see. It's not that we don't want to help, she rushed to say. It's just, Eli's job isn't what it used to be, and the rent here is high, and well, you're not working. It's a lot, Mom. I nodded slowly as if that made sense, as if I hadn't wiped Emma's nose that morning or scrubbed formula from bottles or folded tiny pink socks while Kara slept in. A couple of months, I repeated. That's what I have? She nodded. Plenty of time, right? Sure, plenty of time. Back in the basement, I sat on the edge of the air mattress, knees aching from crouching. I looked around at the damp walls, the stack of labeled boxes, the single window barely big enough to fit my head through. This wasn't home. This was a holding cell, and now I had a countdown. I left at 2:43 a.m. No dramatic exit, no slamming doors. Just the careful sound of my steps down the basement stairs, the soft zip of the duffel bag, and the weight of finality as I quietly pushed the door open to the chilled spring air. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't leave a note. I figured if they noticed I was gone, they'd call. If they didn't, well, I already had my answer. The air smelled like damp earth and early blooms, heavy with a kind of indifference. I sat behind the wheel of my Civic, now dry but still marked by floodwater stains. For a moment, I hesitated, thinking maybe I'd just go to a diner. Wait until morning. Give Kara a chance to call me back upstairs. But the porch light never flicked on. No one opened the door. No voice called into the dark, and so I drove. I didn't get far. Just the edge of town, behind an old auto repair shop closed for the season. I parked near the dumpster, angled to block most of the streetlight. It wasn't safety, it wasn't comfort, but it was mine. The driver's seat didn't recline all the way, and the air smelled faintly of mildew and sadness. I took my coat from the back and wrapped it around myself, tucking the sleeves into the crooks of my knees. It was too quiet. No murmurs of family, no soft cries of baby Emma through the monitor, just the buzz of insects and the distant rustle of raccoons. My stomach grumbled. I ignored it. Somewhere in the glove compartment was a pack of saltines from the Red Cross, but I didn't reach for them. Hunger in that moment was easier than grief. I leaned my head back, closed my eyes, and thought about Roger, my husband, my compass. I remembered the time Kara got lost in the mall as a child, how he kept his cool while I panicked. She'll find her way, he said gently. She knows we're looking. She did find us, crying and sticky with ice cream, but I wasn't sure she'd be looking for me this time. In the silence of the car, I heard his voice again. Not real, but the way memory makes people come alive. He used to joke when we argued, if you ever get fed up and leave me, at least go somewhere warm. But there was one thing he said in earnest, years before he died, during a late-night conversation we never repeated. If they ever make you feel like less, Marian, promise me, don't kneel. Don't beg to stay where love has dried up. I whispered it into the darkness, like a prayer. I won't kneel. I must have drifted off because the sun startled me, pouring through the windshield like fire. My neck ached. My hip had gone numb, but I was still there, still breathing, still me. My phone buzzed, pulling me from the dull trance of discomfort. One new message, Kara. I opened it with a thudding heart. For a moment I expected panic, regret, some sign she'd come looking. But it said, "Emma asked about you this morning. She misses you. I hope you're okay. Sorry we didn't talk more last night. Works a lot right now. Hope you understand." Sorry? Hope? Understand? Not where are you? Not come back? Not I'm worried. Just the soft blur of obligation dressed as concern. I typed, "I'm okay. Just needed some air." Then I deleted it. Instead, I turned off my phone. I sat there for a long time, watching people walk their dogs, head to work, start their ordinary lives. I felt like a ghost, unseen, unanchored, but I was still here. Eventually, I started the engine and drove to the only place I could think of that didn't require explanations, the library. It stood like a quiet church on the edge of the city center, a sanctuary for the lost and lonely. I found a parking spot near the back and walked in like I belonged, like I hadn't just slept in my car or been gently evicted from my daughter's life. The librarian glanced up, a woman in her 50s, gray-streaked hair in a neat braid. She smiled politely, not warmly, not familiarly, but politely. And it was enough. I sat at a corner computer and stared at the login screen for a while, unsure what I was supposed to be looking for. Jobs? Apartments? A map out of this limbo? Instead, I opened a blank document. And for the first time in weeks, I let myself type something true. I don't know where I'm going, but I know I'm done waiting for someone to open the door. The old supermarket on Westfield had been shuttered for years. Its sign faded to illegibility, windows smeared with dust and bird droppings. But the parking lot behind it was flat, quiet, and mostly forgotten. That's where I slept now. Each morning, I'd wake with the sun pressing against the windshield, the outline of tree branches dancing across the glass like shadows from another life. I learned to fold the back seat down just so, propping my pillow, a rolled-up hoodie, against the side. I changed clothes in the cramped back seat, careful to keep the windows fogged. Privacy had become something I earned with precision and silence. Routine anchored me. I washed my face at the gas station on 3rd and Willow, the one with a friendly clerk who didn't ask questions when I lingered too long in the bathroom. I'd splash cold water over my cheeks, dry with paper towels, smooth my hair, and reapply the same dull lipstick I'd found at the bottom of my purse. Then I'd head to the church on Greystone Avenue. They offered free coffee every morning in the rec hall. I wasn't religious, not anymore. But the warmth and quiet murmur of voices made me feel less alone. No one there asked where I came from. I was just another face at the folding tables, sipping from a styrofoam cup. That invisibility, once a gift, began to feel like a weight, heavy, relentless. One afternoon, I spotted Linda Ashcroft, my former neighbor, leaving the pharmacy across the street. She looked almost exactly the same. Neat bob haircut, taupe sweater, the little gold charm bracelet she used to wear on Sundays. I froze, ducking slightly behind the Civic. She walked right past without noticing me, didn't even glance at the car, didn't hesitate. I stared at her back, straight and sure, until it disappeared into traffic. She'd once borrowed my bunt pan for Christmas Eve. We'd traded zucchini bread and babysitting favors. Now, I was a ghost. It happened again a week later. Mr. Klenner from the old post office crossed the parking lot, arms full of dry cleaning. He didn't see me. It shouldn't have surprised me. Why would they recognize this version of me? No pressed slacks, no lipstick done right, no purse with peppermint tucked inside for Emma. Just a tired woman in an old Civic, hunched behind smudged glass. The worst part wasn't being unseen. It was realizing I didn't belong anywhere long enough to be missed. At the library, I found a rhythm. I arrived when the doors opened, took the same corner terminal, and used the free computer time until the system logged me out. I searched job boards, emailed local shelters, and read articles about securing housing with no income. But mostly, I wrote, the librarian, her name tag said R. Pratt Kelly, never asked what I was working on. She just gave me extra sheets of printer scrap and a clipboard, told me to return the pen when I left. So I began writing my own kind of record. Not a memoir, not yet. Just Observations. Day 11. Saw a child give his mittens to his mother. She looked like she might cry. Kindness matters. Day 13. Man outside the gas station handed me a banana. Didn't ask questions, just smiled. I ate slowly. Day 16. Dreamed about the attic. The smell of old books and lemon polish. Missed my own scent. The smell of me. Each entry was brief, but they added up. A map of moments, a breadcrumb trail for some version of me I might meet again later. Someone with keys and a kitchen. Someone who might one day read these and remember how she'd survived. One evening I saw a mother with 2 children waiting for the library to open. One girl had tangled hair and oversized shoes. The other held a box of cereal like a prized possession. I smiled gently. The mother saw me and nodded, tight-lipped, the kind of nod women give when they recognize struggle in someone else's bones. That night, in the car, I reread my journal entries by flashlight. Day 18. A woman saw me. I didn't write what that meant. I didn't need to. It was Tuesday, or maybe Wednesday. Days blurred now, measured only by coffee refills and the shifting angle of sunlight through the library's stained windows. I just finished scribbling a new journal entry, something about the way old men read newspapers like sacred texts, when I checked the library terminal one last time before logging off. A new email blinked in my inbox. The subject line made my breath catch, "Re-estate of Esther Langford, urgent contact requested." My hands hovered over the keyboard. Langford. Esther. The name dropped into my chest like a stone into deep water. Esther Langford was my mother's sister, an elusive aunt who'd lived in California since the 80s. She'd visited once when I was 15, bringing wind chimes and mango jam. After that, she'd faded from holiday letters and phone calls like mist in the sun. I hadn't heard her name in decades. With a shaky finger, I clicked the message. "Dear Ms. Marian Douglas, we are the legal representatives of the late Esther Langford. After diligent efforts to locate you, we are pleased to confirm you as the sole beneficiary of her estate. Please contact our office immediately to review the terms of her will and facilitate the necessary transfers. Sincerely, Daniel Shore, Evergreen & Co.'s, attorneys at Law Pasadena, California." I reread it 5 times, then 10, the words blurred. Not because of disbelief, but because something inside me had cracked. Not a break, a release. My eyes filled before I could stop them. Not because of the money, I didn't yet know how much, but because someone had remembered me, thought of me. Me, who'd been forgotten by neighbors, dismissed by her own daughter, erased quietly into the background of grocery stores and gas stations. Esther remembered. Somewhere she'd signed her name beside mine. She'd thought, "Give this to Marian." That night, I didn't sleep in the Civic. I drove instead. Up and down quiet side streets, letting the cool wind wash over my face through the cracked window. I pulled over once to cry. Deep, ugly sobs that came from the soles of my feet. It wasn't about the inheritance, not entirely. It was grief for every moment I'd felt unseen, unclaimed, unfelt. And now, here it was. Proof that someone had carried a quiet thread of love for me across a continent. By morning, my face was puffy, my body sore from emotion, but my spine felt straighter. There was a shift in how I stood, how I breathed. Something had changed. The library opened at 9. I was waiting. I called Evergreen & Co. from the phone in the study room. Daniel Shore's voice was calm, measured, with the kind of clipped diction only attorneys and radio hosts could manage. "Yes, Ms. Douglas, we've been searching for you for some time. Your aunt left her estate solely in your name. Property in Pasadena, investment accounts, and a modest life insurance policy." My fingers tightened around the phone. "Do you know why she chose me?" I asked, voice barely above a whisper. A pause. "I believe your aunt wrote a note in the file," he said. "One moment." The silence stretched. Then, she wrote, "Marian was the only one who ever wrote back." A memory flashed, Me at 20, replying to one of Esther's rare letters. A scribbled postcard with a California coastline and the words, "Tell your mother I'm still dancing." I'd written her back on lined paper, filling the page with stories about Kara's first steps and Roger's new job. And apparently, she'd remembered. I swallowed hard. "How much are we talking?" "Approximately 1.1 million in assets," Shore replied evenly. "That includes the house, valued at around 870,000 plus liquid funds." I exhaled slowly. A number like that didn't feel real. But somehow it wasn't the zeros that floored me. It was the house, a roof, walls, belonging. Daniel promised to send the documents by overnight courier and arrange for travel accommodations. "We can finalize everything in person once you're ready," he said. I thanked him, hung up. Then I sat there, motionless. The study room felt both too small and too vast at once. I thought about calling Kara. I even typed out a text. "I have something to tell you, something big." Then I deleted it, because this wasn't about her. Not yet. For once, this was mine, all mine. I wanted to know what decisions I'd make without needing approval, what home I'd choose if I wasn't begging for an invitation, what kind of woman I could become if no one was watching, waiting, measuring. For the first time in months, I walked out of the library with my chin high. I didn't have a plan, but I had a destination. And that, for now, was enough. The plane landed in California under a sky so blue it felt artificial. Marian stepped onto the jet bridge with trembling hands, unsure if the warmth in her chest was anxiety or hope, or both. For the first time in months, she wasn't leaving somewhere behind. She was walking towards something. A man in a crisp navy suit stood by baggage claim, holding a small sign that read, "Douglas." His posture was straight, precise. His eyes scanned the crowd without strain. When he saw her, he offered a small, respectful nod. "Ms. Douglas?" he asked. "Yes," Marian replied. "Robert Talbot. I'm with Evergreen & Co. I'll be assisting you during the transition." He extended his hand. She shook it, surprised by the steadiness of her own grip. The drive to Pasadena passed in silence. Palm trees blurred past the window, their shadows cutting patterns across the highway. Marian kept her eyes fixed outside, as if memorizing every detail of this new landscape. The mountains in the distance looked like something from a postcard. Robert broke the silence gently. "Your aunt lived here for nearly 40 years. The neighbors speak highly of her, private but kind. The house has been well maintained, though the gardens will need some attention." Marian smiled faintly. She was always the mysterious one in the family. "And yet," Robert said, glancing at her with a respectful warmth, "she chose you." The car turned onto a quiet street shaded by towering oaks. The house came into view slowly, a two-story craftsman with wide eaves and a wraparound porch. The paint was weathered but dignified, like the face of someone who had earned their wrinkles. Robert pulled into the driveway and handed her the keys. "Take your time," he said. "I'll wait outside while you go in." Marian hesitated at the front steps, then she unlocked the door and stepped inside. The scent was the first thing, lavender and cedar, tinged with the faintest note of old paper. The hardwood floors creaked softly underfoot. The furniture was simple, tasteful, a life curated with quiet intention. In the front room stood a piano draped in lace. A photograph sat on top, a younger Esther, smiling beside a tall woman with silver-streaked hair. Marian picked it up. The affection in their eyes was unmistakable. She moved through the room slowly, reverently. The kitchen was warm, its cabinet still stocked with spices. A teapot sat on the stove, like someone had stepped out and forgotten to return. Upstairs, she found a small sunroom transformed into a library. Floor-to-ceiling shelves lined with books, journals, and letters, all neatly labeled in Esther's careful script. Marian ran her fingers along the spines, pausing at a stack of leather-bound notebooks. She opened the top one. Inside, pages of looping cursive filled every line. April 1978. Patricia painted the hallway yellow, said it felt like sunrise. I think I agree. We danced in the kitchen while the paint dried. Just us and the radio. It felt like the beginning of something permanent. Marian blinked. Turned the page. August 1993. She's sick again. I make tea, but she barely drinks. I hold her through the night. Still, she whispers, "You're my home." Always my home. Dozens of entries, decades of quiet love, a relationship hidden in plain sight, built across breakfast tables and garden walks. Twist 7 hit her like a soft, reverent wave. Esther hadn't lived alone. She had loved, deeply, silently, steadily, for over 40 years. Patricia. Marian closed the journal and pressed it against her chest. Downstairs, in the desk drawer of what must have been Esther's study, she found an envelope with her name written in elegant ink. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. If you're reading this, Marian, it means life hasn't swallowed you. Not completely. I worried it might. I've watched too many women disappear after giving everything away. I don't know what brought you here, but I hope this house finds you before the world forgets who you are. She paused, her throat tightening. You wrote to me once, after I sent that ridiculous postcard about dancing. You said, even if no one dances with you, dance anyway. I never forgot that. A tear slipped down Marian's cheek. This house is yours. Not because of duty or blood, but because I believe you need a place where no one asks for permission to be whole. May this home become your exhale, your beginning. And if the walls feel too quiet at first, just wait. The silence here listens, and it answers. Marian folded the letter slowly, as if trying to imprint each word into her skin. She looked around the room. She wasn't a visitor anymore. She had arrived. The sun was beginning to dip behind the San Gabriel Mountains, casting golden streaks across the porch when the knock came. Marian opened the door to find a woman with a crown of silver curls and eyes like warm tea. She wore gardening gloves and held a small potted succulent in her hands. Evening, she said with a soft smile. You must be Marian. Marian blinked. Yes, and you are... Judith Reyes. I live next door. I was a friend of Esther's. She held out the plant like an offering. Welcome. Marian took the pot, brushing her fingers against the cool ceramic. Thank you. Would you like to come in? They sat on the porch with mugs of chamomile tea Marian found in Esther's cupboard. Judith removed her gloves and placed them on her lap, then folded her hands like someone who had something to say and had been waiting patiently for the right moment. I took care of Esther near the end, Judith began. The nurses came and went, but I was the one who stayed. Marian nodded, grateful for the woman's calm presence. She talked about you often, Judith said. Said you were kind, said you once wrote her a letter that made her cry in a good way. Marian's chest tightened. I barely remember it. Well, she remembered. That's the thing with letters, isn't it? You write them once. The person you love reads them forever. Judith paused, eyes scanning the horizon. She was afraid you wouldn't come. Afraid that... Maybe you'd forgotten her too, like the rest of them did. The rest? Judith sighed. Her family, your family, I guess. When they found out about Patricia, well, they didn't take it kindly. Marian looked down at her tea. I didn't know. No one ever said anything. She didn't make a show of it, but Patricia was her partner for 4 decades. Not just a roommate, not a friend. Her love. Marian felt the words settle into her bones like cold water. She imagined Esther and Patricia building a life in this house, planting lavender in the garden, sharing books in the sunroom, holding hands behind drawn curtains, and doing it all while hiding their truth from the people meant to love them most. She told me once, Judith continued, that love should never have to apologize to survive. But she apologized anyway, to everyone but Patricia. Marian closed her eyes, remembering all the ways she'd diminished herself to fit roles expected of her. Mother, widow, helper. And never once had she asked who she was when no one was watching. "My daughter thinks of me as useful," Marian said suddenly, "like a charger you keep in a drawer and only pull out when your battery's low." Judith didn't flinch. She never really saw me, just what I could do, what I gave up, but it never made me whole in her eyes. The words hung between them, fragile and real. Judith reached for her tea. "Maybe that's why Esther left you this house. Not just because she loved you, but because she knew what it felt like to be a ghost in your own life." Marian felt tears prickling, but she blinked them back. Twist 8 came gently, but it hit hard. "She told me once," Judith added, "that you were the only one she trusted not to sell this place to the first bidder. Said, 'Marian's different. She knows what a home means.'" Marian turned to look at the house. The chipping paint, the wisteria vines growing wild over the fence, the creak of the front steps. It wasn't just a house. It was a witness to love, to solitude, to resilience. "I won't sell it," Marian said quietly. Judith smiled. "Didn't think you would." They sat for a long time without speaking, just the sounds of dusk around them, the wind in the trees, the hum of cicadas, the distant bark of a neighbor's dog, a silence that didn't need to be filled. That night, Marian unpacked her few belongings and placed the succulent on the windowsill above the kitchen sink. She ran her hand over the counter where Esther might have once rolled out dough or poured morning coffee. The walls didn't feel strange anymore. They felt expectant. She looked at herself in the hallway mirror. Not the tired woman from the Civic, not quite the mother from Ohio. Someone new, someone beginning. Mornings in Pasadena arrived like a soft invitation. Marian woke not to car horns or cold condensation on glass, but to the rustle of leaves outside her bedroom window and the smell of jasmine blooming along the back fence. The house had settled around her like a second skin, and each creak of the floorboards now felt familiar, like an old friend whispering, "You're safe here." She made her own routines. On Mondays, she walked to the corner market and bought herself a small bouquet. Sometimes daisies, sometimes sunflowers. She arranged them in an old milk glass vase she found in Esther's cupboard and placed it by the window. On Tuesdays, she tried new recipes: chicken roasted with rosemary, lemon bars like the ones she'd once made for Kara's bake sales. It didn't matter if the food turned out perfect. What mattered was that it was made for no one but herself. Wednesdays brought book club. The community center was only 5 blocks away, and Judith Reyes insisted on walking with her. Marian hadn't joined a group in decades, but Judith said, "There's no shame in starting late. The view's better on the second climb anyway." So Marian joined. Their current book was a novel about a widow rediscovering herself through gardening and poetry. It was fine, predictable. But Marian found herself underlining passages anyway, sentences that stirred something raw and true inside her. Not because the writing was exceptional, but because the questions it asked echoed too closely. Who am I when I'm not needed? What happens when I stop saying yes? What do I love now that I get to choose? One afternoon, she stayed behind after book club to help stack chairs. Judith handed her a cup of lukewarm chamomile and pointed to the little bench under the fig tree. "You've been quiet today," Judith said. Marian shrugged. "It's a quiet day." Judith tilted her head, not buying it. Then Marian surprised herself. "I think I miss her," she said softly. "My daughter, or I miss who I thought she was." Judith didn't answer, just sipped her tea and waited. Twist 9 crept up gently, unnoticed until it was already blooming. During the next session, they discussed a chapter where the main character finds an old photograph. Herself as a young mother, vibrant, tired, glowing with love. The others offered the usual responses. "Children grow too fast. We give everything. It's hard but rewarding." Then Marian spoke. "She gave me 6 weeks," she said, voice low but firm. 6 weeks between my house flooding and my exile to a car, and then she said she was too busy. The room fell quiet. I begged for space, and they gave me conditions. I cried in stairwells and borrowed money to buy diapers when she was 19. But when I had nothing, she left me to figure it out alone. Marian looked down at her lap, surprised to feel hot tears slipping past her cheeks. Judith placed a gentle hand on her arm. "Do you forgive her?" she asked. It wasn't a challenge. It wasn't therapy. It was a question from one woman to another, standing in the middle of a life too long, spent folding. Marian met Judith's eyes and answered, not with anger, but with a strange clarity. "I don't know if I need to forgive her," she said. "Maybe I just need to forgive myself for thinking I was only worth what I gave away." Judith nodded once, slow and solemn. "That's the hardest part," she said, "learning that you get to matter without being useful." They sat together under the fig tree until long after the others had gone. The call came late on a Thursday, just as Marian was pruning dead blooms from the backyard rose bushes. The phone buzzed in her apron pocket, unfamiliar in its urgency. She glanced at the screen. Kara. For a brief moment, Marian considered letting it ring out, but old habits still had weight. She answered. "Hello?" There was a pause. Static hesitation. Then Kara's voice, too chipper to be casual. "Me. Hi. Wow. So glad you picked up. I've been meaning to call." Marian said nothing, waiting. "So, we heard about the house," Kara continued. "From the attorney. It sounds beautiful. Historic, right? Pasadena's so charming." Marian hummed a vague sound of acknowledgement. "And, well," Kara went on, "we thought maybe it's time to visit. Emma's been asking about you, and with the baby coming soon, it might be our last chance to travel for a bit." There it was. Clean, efficient, coded in polite intention. "We're planning to fly out next weekend, just a few days." Marian's grip on the pruning shears tightened, then relaxed. "Of course," she said, voice calm. "Let me know your flight details." She didn't ask what they were hoping to see. She already knew. Later that afternoon, as Marian stood at the sink rinsing dirt from her hands, she told Judith about the call. "They're coming," she said simply. Judith paused, wiping her own hands on a dish towel. "And how do you feel?" "Like I've been asked to host an inspection." Judith gave a small chuckle, then turned serious. "Prepare yourself. They're not just coming to see you." Twist 10 settled like dust in Marian's chest, expected but still uncomfortable. Judith stepped closer, lowering her voice. "They'll want details, numbers, possibilities." "I know." That evening, Marian opened the local directory and called a locksmith. "I want new locks," she told the man on the line. "All of them, front, back, side, and I want fingerprint access." "Fancy," he replied. "New homeowner?" Marian hesitated, then smiled. "Yes, very new." The work was done the next day. Shiny deadbolts replaced the aged brass knobs. A sleek digital pad sat flush beside the door frame. The locksmith programmed her fingerprint and showed her how to add and delete users. "Just you?" he asked, holding out the scanner. "Yes," Marian replied. "Just me." That night, Marian sat in Esther's old reading chair with a cup of herbal tea and a pen. The letter came without effort. Clean, decisive lines on thick stationery. "If anything happens to me," she wrote, "do not hand over the keys to my daughter." This house was given in trust, for memory, for freedom, for rest. I've only just remembered how to breathe here. She sealed the letter, wrote "to be opened upon my death" on the front, and tucked it into a small wooden box in the top drawer of the study desk. Then she leaned back and exhaled. She wasn't afraid. She wasn't angry. She was ready. The rental car pulled into the driveway at 10:17 a.m., punctual down to the minute. Marian watched from the front window, her teacup steady in her hands. She had dressed deliberately, pressed navy blouse, hair pinned back, pearl earrings Esther once wore to town meetings. She looked neither meek nor affluent, just precise, present. The car doors opened. Kara stepped out first, a little heavier now with the pregnancy, her designer flats clicking against the pavement. Eli emerged next, his usual pressed polo shirt, offset by a clipboard tucked under his arm. Marian noticed it immediately. They approached the porch with practiced smiles. "Mom," Kara said brightly, opening her arms for a hug that Marian accepted briefly. "You look rested." Eli nodded in polite acknowledgement. "Nice weather. House looks charming." Marian gestured to the wicker chairs. "Let's sit." They settled into place, Kara pulling her cardigan tighter around her. The silence stretched as Marian waited. She wasn't going to help them begin. Finally, Kara exhaled. "So, we've been thinking. The timing of everything. It's really remarkable. You getting this place right when we've been talking about our next chapter." Marian sipped her tea. "Next chapter?" "Well," Kara continued, "with Emma starting school soon and another baby on the way, the apartment's just not cutting it anymore. We found this perfect place. 4 bedrooms, a backyard, great school district. It's everything we've dreamed of," Eli added, sliding the clipboard onto the table between them. "Floor plans, mortgage calculations, realtor printouts." "And?" Marian asked. Kara gave a nervous chuckle. "Well, we were hoping maybe you'd consider helping with the down payment. Just a loan, of course. You'd be helping the girls more than us." Marian's gaze was unwavering. "How much?" "Just 60,000. Eli replied quickly. "It's not even a quarter of the total cost, but it makes all the difference with the bank, and we'd pay you back." Silence followed, thick and tangible. Then, twist 11. Marian set her cup down carefully. "Let me ask you something. If I hadn't inherited this house, if I was still sleeping in my car behind that grocery store, would you be here today?" Kara's face froze. Her mouth parted, but no words came out. Eli looked at the porch floor, picked at something on his pants. The silence that followed wasn't just awkward, it was devastating. It reached into all the quiet betrayals Marian had endured, each cold night in that Civic, each ignored message, each polite dismissal. "That's what I thought," Marian said softly. Kara's face tightened. "Mom, that's not fair." Marian raised a hand. Calm. Final. "Fair. You left me with a toddler's high chair and a husband who taped notes about toilet paper to the fridge. You sent texts about real estate while I shivered in my car. You talked about family, but only when it was convenient." Kara flushed crimson. Eli shifted uncomfortably. Marian leaned forward slightly, her voice low but resonant. "The woman who lived in that car is gone. She gave everything. She waited for gratitude that never came. She's dead now." Kara blinked. You sound different." "I am." Kara's eyes welled with tears, almost on cue. She looked away, jaw trembling, and when she turned back to Marian, her voice was brittle with emotion. "Mom, I didn't mean for it to be like that. I didn't know how bad it got. I didn't think you'd end up in your car. If I had known..." Her voice cracked. Eli remained silent, posture stiff. Marian watched her daughter cry, and for the first time in her life, she didn't feel moved to soothe. She didn't reach for tissues. She didn't murmur reassurance. She waited. "I didn't mean to hurt you," Kara whispered. "I was tired and overwhelmed. You were just always so strong." Marian folded her hands, her voice calm. "You don't have to intend to hurt someone to do it. Neglect doesn't need planning. It thrives in silence, in forgetting." Kara covered her face with her hands. "It's not like I didn't care," she said. "It's just, everything was so hard. Work, the kids, Eli's job." Marian interrupted gently. "And I was easier to forget." The words landed quietly. Kara dropped her hands, mascara smudging her cheeks. So what now? You just cut me out? After everything I've done for you? Marian tilted her head. What exactly would that be? Kara opened her mouth, closed it again. I stayed 6 weeks, Marian continued, and in that time I was told to pay rent, count my groceries, and look for other options by spring. You didn't offer me refuge. You offered me a countdown. Twist 12 arrived with unshakable clarity. I've set up a scholarship, Marian said, named after Esther, for women over 50. Women who gave until they had nothing left and found themselves alone because of it. Kara blinked. What? It launches next spring. I use the inheritance money, some of it. The rest I'll live on, quietly, comfortably. I'll do what Esther wanted me to do, live without permission. Eli stirred, finally speaking. That money, wasn't it meant to support family? Marian smiled, not unkindly. It is. The kind of family who understands love isn't alone. The kind who offers care without invoices. Kara stood abruptly, crossing her arms, wounded pride radiating from every inch. So you're just done with us? No, Marian said. I'm done needing you to be something you're not. The porch settled into silence. I'll always love you, Kara, she added softly. But that doesn't mean I'll make myself small to fit your life anymore. Eli muttered something under his breath and walked toward the rental car. Kara followed after a beat, pausing at the top step. I really did miss you, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Marian nodded. I believe you, but missing someone and showing up for them are two different things. Kara nodded slowly, her face unreadable. Then she turned and walked away. That evening, the porch was filled with the gentle clink of teacups and quiet laughter. Judith, Marian, and 3 women from the book club gathered under the hanging wisteria vines, passing around lemon cookies and debating the symbolism in that month's novel. The sun dipped low, casting gold across the yard. A breeze carried the scent of sage and lavender. The house felt full, not with family by blood, but by choice. Inside, on the living room wall, a simple wooden frame held a letter beneath glass. Esther's handwriting curved in graceful loops across the aged paper. Living means choosing who gets to enter our lives, and who we'll never give to again. Marian glanced at it as she poured more tea, her heart quiet. She had chosen, and this time, it was enough.